Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to 22 Panels. And today is another one of my big episodes, at least in terms of quantity of people on screen in front of me, because Mark Pratt decided to bring everybody with him for to talk about his latest installment in the four-color trilogy, which rumor has it may actually become a quadrilogy, but we'll see. Um, hey, Mark, you want to introduce your cast and director?
Yeah. Again, I'm Mark Pratt. I wrote this thing. We have with us Terry McCabe, who directed it.
Hello.
We have Brian Polarchek, who plays Jack Kirby.
Hello, hello, hello.
Brian Bro, who plays Stan the Man Lee.
Thank you for having me.
And we have Sean Harkleroad, who plays several characters, including the great Carmine Infantino.
Hi.
I got to see your opening preview performance, and I was very happy. It was very nice. So, how are you guys all feeling about the play right now? And don't worry about upsetting Mark if you think it sucks. Just like lay it out there. He can handle it.
Oh, sorry, what was the question again?
How are you feeling about the play so far?
Oh, yeah. It's great. It's really fun to dive into such a massive story that takes place over so many years. It's a little scary to dive into something that is this epic in scope and also reflecting real people. I mean, this isn't a documentary in any way, but the fact that real people are being represented on stage, I always find a little bit more of a challenge, and there's a thrill in that challenge. So for me, I've really enjoyed the process to dive into Jack and to just work with this cast of really amazing actors and get to work with a friend like Mark and get to work with an old mentor like Terry. It's been great to kind of put all those pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah, I would echo that for sure. It is a bit daunting to take on these characters, right? I mean, they're living legends. And people feel so strongly about them. So it's a massive undertaking, and I think everybody's really brought their best to it. And it's also really high energy, and it's really fun, and it's just sort of a nonstop ride for 2 hours. And everybody who's seen it, and I think everybody involved in it, I think we're all having a good time, and I think that shows.
Yeah, I definitely felt like it showed the night I was there. Mark, just because I have sporadic listenership, you want to introduce the play and the trilogy itself a little bit.
Oh,
Um,
sure, yeah.
and Ron
This
and
the
Terry have been along for the whole ride, so if Mark forgets anything, add.
Yeah, it's a project that's been going on. This is the third year. It's called the Four Color Trilogy, and it is three plays that touch upon important moments in the history of the comic book industry. So the first one, which was in 2002, which Terry also directed, was called The Mark of Cain, and it was about Bob Kane and Bill Finger and the creation of Batman and how Bill Finger's credit was squashed by Bob Kane, and that was a very successful show. And then last year, which I directed, was The Innocence of Seduction, which was about Dr. Frederick Wortham and the Senate subcommittee hearings on juvenile delinquency, which led to a real crackdown on comic books and a self-regulation body called the Comics Code Authority that kind of crushed a lot of the uh, creativity out of comics. And in that one, Mr. Harkleroad played the great Bill Gaines himself. Uh, he of the one of the most disastrous Senate appearances of all time. So, and then this year is the House of Ideas, which is about Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and the creation of Marvel Comics as it is, as we know it today, and also their lives as it passed through that, and the conflict between the two of them about credit and about creators' rights and things like that. Really, I consider it kind of a clash of egos. I think that's what this show is about. But and yes, Terry did direct this one as well. So is that enough of a wrap up?
I think so. I mean, I just get to have fun, but I think you guys want to like somewhat promote yourselves, and it's easier to promote if people know what we're talking about.
Well, I can say all of the guys you have on this podcast right now are incredibly talented, incredibly wonderful people.
Wait a minute, but I'm on this podcast. All but one of the guys. Um,
As the
uh,
host, you get to be the
the exception to the rule.
no.
Exactly. So Brian, you're playing Comics Titans. Are you comic geeks? Did you, I guess, what did you know coming in? What did you learn? What surprised you?
Stanley.
I knew this question was going to come up, and I I was very much I loved the characters of a lot of comics, but I did not growing up reading a lot of comics. I did read some, and Fantastic Four was among them. But I know that there are some diehard comic fans, even right here on this call. And I hope I don't come off as a poser of any kind. I did not have the breadth of comic book knowledge.
I'm gonna interrupt just for a second because even on this call, yes, we have some diehard comic fans, but I know Sean tends more towards old comic strips. I tend more towards non-superhero and foreign. Mark's all over the place. So, just because you're not a comic geek doesn't. I mean, even because you're a comic geek, I had to bone up on Stan and Jack to talk to you guys.
Yeah, and I think so did I to be involved in
Right.
this production. Growing up, I was really big into the trading cards
Okay.
of like X-Men and things like that. Big into the X-Men old school cartoon series. So I was always very into watching things and less into reading the comics. But
Well, there's still
I've got
time.
to there is still time, and I've got to give major props to Mark for bringing in just the a cornucopia of research that he had stacks and stacks of books in the rehearsal room that you could just check out like a library. And
That's cool.
it was just immensely helpful to learn about the history of these people, where they came from, and I think having this story originate and be put together by people that have a deep love of this culture and this material, it having that as a resource was immensely helpful to me.
Um, I I was a comic book geek. I guess I'm recovered.
No. You never recover.
I
Only
I
remission
started at
or expansion. So
sorry.
sometimes comic book geeks start to have lives beyond comics, and that's
Yeah,
okay. But you never recover. That
true,
implies that
true
there's something to
enough.
recover from.
True enough. True enough. No, I grew up as a kid, I don't know who gave me my first comics, but I know I had a few issues of Spider-Man and a few issues of Batman that somewhere around the age of 10, I just read the same issues over and over and over again until they were just completely, blown apart. And shortly thereafter, I started committing my weekly allowance to the comic book store. It was like every Saturday my parents would do their errands and my dad would always stop to buy like lottery tickets or whatever at the convenience store, and there was a comic book store that was two doors down, and so dad would go into the convenience store and I would go and hang out in the comic book store and inevitably have to get dragged out. So I have
Is this
a
store still there? Can we give it some love?
no, unfortunately they closed down years ago. But I have a collection of I don't know, 3, 4, 5,000 comics that are still packaged neatly in my attic. I really got into all the X-Men titles. I think the Jim Lee stuff in the 90s was kind of that was my home base for comics. I loved all the Batman stuff. I read all the Batman titles. I followed Spider-Man for a few years. And I had I had every single issue of G.I. Joe from 1 up through like, I don't know, wherever they canceled the run, 175 or something like that. So that's
Well,
kind of where I came at
if
it.
you're a GI Joe comic geek, because I am not a GI Joe comic geek, and the stuff that they're putting out at Image right now has made me actually purchase and read GI Joe comics, so you might consider it.
All right.
And
I
Kelly
mean,
Thompson's Scarlet is outstanding.
but I mean, if you want to talk about somebody who really has a history,
Ah, yes.
yes, you have to speak to Mr. McCabe.
That was where I was going next, because I even heard that one of the artifacts used in this show belongs to you. Did I
Yes.
overhear you saying that to somebody?
Yeah, I was one of the the original Silver Age Marvel comic readers. The artifact that's in the show that's mine is my Merry Marvel Marching Society button. It is delighted to be out of my sock drawer after all of these decades. And yeah, I spent basically the 60s reading Marvel comics, starting with Fantastic Four #8, the first appearance of the Puppet Master. And from that point on, I basically bought the whole Marvel lineup, not the romance comics and not the westerns, but both superhero line plus Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos. Um, and by the end of the 60s, going into the early 70s, I had 2 full dresser drawers, hundreds and hundreds of Silver Age Marvel comics, including a lot of like first and early editions. And once Lee and Kirby were no longer personally doing the Fantastic Four, I stopped seeing the point and I drifted away. And then when I went off to college in 73, I gave my comic book collection away, which I still kick myself for. I could have
It's better
paid for
than
my
threw it
college.
away. Still better than threw it away.
Yeah,
Way better than threw it away. At
well,
least
I don't know what the
it went to
guy,
home.
Ray Nelson, I don't know what he did with the comics. He probably
Well,
threw them away.
you need to look him up. If he sold them, you need a cut.
Yeah. But I was absolutely, the guy that Stan Lee was writing to on the bullpen bulletin page every month.
Right.
You know,
So, I mean, I've talked to, I mean, probably the person that I've talked the most about reading in that era. Even wrote a letter. His first comics credit was a letter to Marvel. Was why am I drawing? Mark, the president of DC, Paul Levitz. Paul Levitz. No, Paul Levitz. Talks about that era a lot in the same way that you just did. But one of the things that he always brings up is because there weren't comic shops and because they came in like bulks, he had to figure out all of the different places that sold comics because you might not have, you picked up Fantastic Four #8 at this drugstore, and then the next time you saw Fantastic Four there, it was issue 10. And if you wanted 9, you had to figure out which drugstore had gotten 9.
yes, yes.
Did you do
I
any
had
of that?
sort of the same experience Brian was just talking about, which is that every Saturday, um, after I went down, I was a paper boy, and I'd go down and I'd settle my account with the paper and have, whatever money was left over between $5 and $10 a week. And then I would hit the 3 places in DeKalb, Illinois that sold
Okay, you're from
comic
DeKalb.
books. There were no comic shops. So
No,
there
not yet.
yeah, there was like Ralph's Newsstand downtown, and then there were 2 grocery stores that each had a rack of comic books. I would hit all 3
Okay.
and buy everything I could. Marvel.
Very cool. And if it's $5 left, I mean, at the time, that's what, 10
Yeah.
comics. And then they went to 12 cents and it became like 8. But still, that's a nice haul. Eddie has joined the program. Eddie likes to join the program. If you can't hear me, it is because he moved my microphone somewhere.
Well, I mean, and to fill out the trifecta, I think we should have Mr. Harkleroad talk about his extensive
Definitely.
Incredible Hulk collection.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Rolling into rehearsals to show
Yeah.
off. Yeah.
Well, when I think I was 4 or 5, my grandfather went to an auction and brought back a box, just a lot of comics. And my cousin and my brother and I, well, they were older, so they divvied up the superheroes, and I got a lot of the Archies and Spike and Casper and Wendy's, but also some Fantastic Fours. And so I fell in love with the Fantastic Four there. Uh, and then from there, got into the Incredible Hulk, especially with the TV show. And
I remember the TV show.
yeah, so I was a huge Fantastic Four
I-
fan until the TV show, and then I became a Hulk fan. And
Though to be fair, I think
years-
my strongest memory is of Ferrigno and Bixby on Mr. Rogers.
I
And
did not
Mr.
see that.
Rogers showing us how the makeup worked. Well, I'm just a little
Awesome.
younger than you. Not a lot younger, but a little bit younger.
Yeah.
So I wasn't allowed to watch the TV show quite as much, but Mr. Rogers, when he had him on,
Right.
all over it.
Well, and so then it was going to convenience stores. They used to be sold in convenience stores, gas stations, and grocery stores, and the Rock Drug Store in Valdez, North Carolina. And so over the years, I have kept up collecting, and I have every issue of the Incredible Hulk now, back to issue 3, except for number 6, which, as Terry pointed out, has to drive me insane.
It's always worse to be missing a middle number. To have
Right.
like the uninterrupted run from a certain point to a certain point is way easier than I've got this 300 issues except for
Right.
this one and
And
that
I
one.
think 2 and 6 are gettable, but I don't know that I'll ever feel the need to spend $38,000 on.
Now you gotta
Number one.
look for like a one that's beat to hell.
When I was so in high school, late 80s, there was one that was beat to hell, and the guy offered me it for $99. And my mother told me that she would give me the money if I'd pay her back. And I was like, no, I can't see spending that much money on a comic book. Great.
How close was your run then?
At that point, I was really focusing on just getting from 102 up.
Okay.
I think I was starting to
Then
work
it's
with the
then
Tales
it's
from
more
Dust.
forgivable than if you were already down into like the 50s.
Right. So so basically, when I was 14, so I came and went into comics, and I was on a bus trip through Canada, and issue 300 of the Incredible Hulk came out, and I bought it on that bus trip. And that's the moment from that whatever summer 1984, I have bought the Incredible Hulk every month since then.
That is an impressive run. Very, very cool. So, Mark, tell me, I mean, we know from the previous couple of times you've been on, like how deeply you research um the plays. Was there anything that struck you? I mean, you talked already a little bit about the Clash of Egos, but was there anything in particular that wound up striking you about Stan and Jack, particularly something that you might not have realized before?
Wow, that's there's probably a dozen things, but you know, like a particularly emblematic thing is that building the timeline. I wouldn't even say it was something that I realized about them. I think it's the narrative that has built up around these two guys. I mean, like when this particular relationship and this particular conflict and this particular uh you know schism has become such a thing with comic fans, and there's story after story after story that seems to get handed down. And you know, when you start really looking at it, like there's so much of it that just doesn't make any sense. There's this famous story is that a lot of the Kirby faithful will tell you is this story about Jack coming into the Marvel or Atlas offices and finding Stan weeping, and that the story has come that Stan was like, "Oh, we're not selling anything," and Jack comes in and says, "No, I have this great idea for this thing called the Fantastic Four." But by that point, Jack had been, you know, like that. The narrative of that doesn't make any sense timeline wise. You know, it would have happened way too early as far as Jack returning to the company. That happened in the, you know, the very late 50s. Um, so then you're sitting there and thinking, okay, well, what could have been happening that would have happened to have Stan weeping about something? And that's when uh uh I started looking at Joe Maneely, who was the artist that Stan worked with a lot in the late 50s. And I didn't know much about Joe Maneely.
I didn't know who he
But
was until Howard Chaykin brought him up when I talked to him.
yeah, but it is really fascinating when you look at Joe Maneely and that he was a vastly talented guy who was, you know, tragically killed. And he's not a character in the show, and he doesn't actually appear in the show other than a photograph. But like it became really apparent to me like how much the death of Joe Maneely is sort of the catalyst that causes the the formation of Marvel Comics as we know it. Um, because without Joe Maneely's death, I don't know that there's a reason for Stan to turn so strongly to Jack for art and, you know, inspirations and things like that. Um, it's a very long-winded thing. I mean, that's sort of
Right.
that's long-winded and but you know, it was I timeline wise, I was like, well, you know, the story about Jack coming into the office sort of ties into Joe Maneely's death. It's about the same time period. And, you know, it's also like could have been it's also I'd say the catalyst for Jack getting more and more work with at the time Atlas Comics,
Right.
because, you know, Martin Goodman, the publisher, was changing the name of the company like every 6 months. So
Number ones are sellers. Haven't you heard that?
well, you know, it also helps you like hide your profit margins. So, but I mean, I think that really one of the things, just in answer to your question, I think that the Joe Maneely factor was something that really struck me as I was working on it.
So Terry, as a uh, somebody who'd been the Mary Marvel Marcher, the one that Stan was writing to in his soapbox, when you first saw Mark's script, was there anything that you went, wait a minute? Or was it all familiar? Did
Oh,
it?
well,
Yeah.
no, I mean, the depth of research that Mark has brought to all three of these plays is just very, 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 very impressive. So no, there was nothing that I, read in a play that I thought it wasn't like that. Everything rang true.
Okay.
The thing about when I read the play though, um, I had read the first two, um, and we weren't talking about producing it or anything at this point. He sent it out to each of the plays out to a number of people to just ask for feedback. This was, late in the shutdown, caused by the pandemic. This was somewhere around then. And I read the first one, Mark of Cain, and I thought, oh, this is great. And I knew it was part of a trilogy. Um, and so I didn't say anything to Mark about, I gave him the feedback I had, but I didn't say anything to him about perhaps City Lit producing it. Because I hadn't read the other two. And I figure the thing to do with the trilogy is produce the whole thing or wish it well somewhere else. And then a few months later, when he sent it out, I read the second one, and thought it was even better, and figured out at this point, he hadn't said anything, but I figured out that the third play must be about Lee and Kirby, because the first play is basically about the 40s, not exclusively. And the second play is basically about the 50s. And I knew or had a sense that the third one was going to be about the 60s. And I thought, well, the story in the 60s is Marvel, and the story in Marvel is the Lee and Kirby relationship. And so I was worried at this point because I'm not anti-Kirby, but I'm very pro Stan. And I think a lot of the debate about, Lee and Kirby has been unfair to Stan. And so I was worried that Mark's play would sort of follow the conventional wisdom, in which case I wouldn't want to produce it. So I didn't say any of this to Mark, but I was really nervous about the third play. And then it came and I just loved it. And I thought it was, I think it is eminently fair to the two of them. And it doesn't let either one of them off the hook, and it doesn't trash either one of them. It's, the theme of the play is kind of Stan and Jack, Jack and Stan. They're both responsible for, the cultural renaissance that they spearheaded. And they're both responsible for the fact that their relationship didn't work. And once I saw that, I emailed Mark and said, City Lit would love to produce all three of these plays. And I was not, at that point, I was worried that he already had something lined up. But he didn't, and so here we are.
Well, Terry, I did, but the Poughkeepsie players just, I was like, forget you people.
They have a great reputation.
Yeah, but we would have to go on the road.
No, I think,
But would this play in Poughkeepsie?
Man, everything plays in Poughkeepsie. No, I think, I totally, it was important to me with this particular story, I didn't want to, I think Sean put it best when we were talking about all three of these, is that no one's going to get angry if you say that Bob Kane was a jerk, because as in that play, Jim Steranko says,
I've had him called a jerk by people that I know who dined with him regularly.
Yeah. Well, Jim Steranko and I put the line in Mark of Cain, it's like there's not one guy in comics who has a good story about Bob Kane. And
that's not true. Bob Kane has many good stories about Bob Kane.
Yeah.
There's one guy in comics.
Bob Kane has great stories about Bob Kane. But and the one on his gravestone is the best. Anyway, that's a different story altogether. But and no one is going to get angry about saying that Dr.
Wortham.
Dr. Wortham was a kind of
A
a
terrible
ridiculous,
scientist.
a ridiculous caricature of uh, pinched, you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
And,
But I
for that
mean,
matter, nobody's going to get upset about Bill Gaines being weird.
yeah. Well,
He's a
somebody
weird
did
guy.
in a review.
Did they?
That's a different story altogether. But, like the minute you walk into this particular story, like there's somebody is going to be like, oh, that's not fair, no matter what you say and no matter how even-handed you try to be. And but I mean, I just think that that's not the reality. I don't think it I think that both of these men uh had perfectly valid reasons to do what they did. And I also think that both of these men did things that were terribly awful to the other. I mean, like some of the things Jack said in later years about Stan, I thought were just way out of line. And I think that a lot of the things that I think that Stan, my wife, when she read the play, like she has told me that this is her favorite of the three. And she just said that it was terribly moving to her because of Stan's obliviousness to what was happening to Jack and why Jack felt the way he did. And I think that to me became sort of the emblematic thing is like, I think that, I mean, and there's these two gentlemen should talk about their characters, but I mean, I just think that
Well,
I think I think that Jack was so good with people who were comic book people, and Stan was so good with people who weren't. And I think that is what is miraculous about what they created, and also why things turned out the way they did. All of those people who started San Diego Comic-Con, where Jack was there every year and they all see him as something of a god. And while that's happening, Stan's out trying to get his foot in Hollywood and trying to, make himself into some sort of media figure. And that's just a differing way of looking at things. Stan's connecting to trying to connect to everybody, and Jack is like, I like these people. That's the way I kind of see it. That was very long-winded, and I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. In preparation for both this and because we needed something to fill a couple of weeks on the regular podcast, Tyler and I read Tom Scioli's Jack Kirby and Stan Lee books.
Mm-hmm.
And between those and the play, one of the things that really stood out to me is Jack came up from nothing, but was kind of the king of nothing. Stan really came up more well off, even if he didn't feel like it, because his dad was a bum, because mom came from money. So he didn't really know what it was like to have to work. He knew what it was like to have to be the bottom of the food chain at his cousin's publishing company. It's a very different kind of grind. And I thought you guys both portrayed the humanity of those characters really well, because it takes a certain amount of ego and um just refusal to accept defeat, to be that kid from the poor neighborhood that just goes off and does what he wants to do, but is still successful, doesn't go off to the mines or what. I mean, he does that if he has to, but like animation, no, this sucks. We're gonna um and it also it's a certain kind of insecurity that comes from being in an overall privileged family, but being essentially the poor kid in that privileged family. So if Brian and Brian would like to talk about how that informed their performances, that
Yeah,
would be
only
great.
if Brian goes first.
Ooh, ooh, toss up. Um,
Alphabetical order.
ooh. Well, then that's my good friend Brian.
Stanley?
Oh, see, I was thinking alphabetical by the Brian, in which case you're
Oh
an
yeah,
I and I'm a Y.
oh, that's true. That's true. I was just going
I'm
last
kicking it
names.
back
All
to
right.
you.
Jack?
All
That
right,
is
that's
what I
fine.
was
No,
thinking.
no, that's great. I mean, I do think there's something that I absolutely love about uh just Jack as who he is as a person and as an artist that I identify with in so many ways and so many levels. I mean, I grew up in a low income blue collar family. Um, and I'm the first person in my extended family, not even my immediate family, but my extended family that got a 4-year college degree. And much to my parents' dismay, I decided to be an actor with a college degree. Right. So I very much had the thought about Jack kind of going through the same thing, living through the depression. And he came for his backstory is just amazing with his dad basically being aristocracy and running to this country and then working and living in abject poverty, and that idea that Jack was determined to get his family out of that and to get his family to a better class of living, but he was going to do it by being an artist. And that was he was just like, that's what I'm going to do. He is steadfast, he's committed, and regardless of what he has to do, um, he was going to make it happen. And to me, I just think that there's something really admirable about um, that level of commitment. It doesn't mean, and I mean, I can't say that I've suffered the injustices that Jack did, and I can't say that I have the level of talent that Jack has, but I'll say that I definitely have found myself on that path where I feel like, no, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. And it doesn't always mean that I'm happy while I'm doing it, which I think Jack, definitely has those moments, especially in our play where he's, rubbed the wrong way by things. And, sometimes rightfully so. Sometimes maybe there's a little bit of ego involved in it. But, I think that's real and that's human. And that's one of the things that's really amazing about these two characters. My wife asked me a few days after rehearsal started, "How's it going?" And I said, "I don't know. I think I have an uphill battle." And she goes, "What do you mean? Is this is just not going well?" I said, "No, rehearsals are going fine. I just think that my playwright and my director are on Team Stan Lee, and I need to convince them that Jack Kirby is more, the go-to guy here." Um, but to Mark and Terry's credit, both of them have been really studious about making sure that this play doesn't necessarily answer questions, but perhaps create more of them, right? Which I think is what good art does. Is it makes you think and it makes you contemplate your own existence and how you navigate through the world. And that's one of the things that I absolutely love about working on this piece. And I mean, Jack is going to be with me forever after this because it's every piece of research that I've combed through, every documentary that I've watched, every little sketch that I've analyzed of his. There's something really interesting and impactful, and I don't know. I just identify with him as a person and his work on such a deep level that I'm really honored that I get to do this and be a part of it.
That's going to be really hard to follow. Thanks for that.
You're
Wish you
welcome,
went first
Stanley.
now.
You know, I said earlier it was kind of a daunting task to approach a character like this. You know, you don't want it to veer off into sort of making your portrayal a caricature in any way. You want to make it real and respectful of the person. And for me, growing up, I had a lot less knowledge of who Jack Kirby was, obviously, growing up, because Stan Lee is the face, and he's such a promotional machine. Always upbeat and always like in your face and but welcoming, like Mark was saying, he wanted to bring everybody in, everybody's welcome. And I think, what surprised me, I don't know if I would say most about what we discovered in the process, but one big thing that surprised me about Stan is that, this wasn't always his life. Marvel wasn't always his life. He wanted to be a legitimate, literary writer.
See, I'm gonna slam Stan and slam you for not making air quotes. You can be a legitimate writer in comics.
Absolutely, absolutely. I apologize if anything came off disrespectful to comic writers.
No, that's actually. I mean, I only bring it up because that is like that's my only real problem with Stan. Is that I don't think he ever took the comic writing seriously enough.
Yeah, and I can see where you're coming from on that. And that, I mean, the fact that he saved his real name for the inevitable Pulitzer Prize winning book he was going to write later. But he became such a powerhouse, and I think one of the challenges was drilling down to who he was behind closed doors. You put that public face on, but is that you? And I think, to a large extent, it kind of was. Like, that just seems like who he was in person. And he, again, back to what Mark said, obliviousness. That I don't, it doesn't feel like anything was ever mean-spirited with him, but he wanted to be famous. He wanted to notoriety. He wanted the company to do well, and he wanted to put out good, interesting, new work. And I think along that path to becoming well known and doing good work, he made some maybe moves that were self-involved or maybe a little. Go ahead.
It's one of the reasons I brought up the very different backgrounds, because so many of his decisions that frustrated Jack, that frustrated other people, if you think of them in the context of somebody who grew up around people who are the decision makers and make those sorts of decisions, whatever we think of capitalism, that's how management works.
Mm-hmm.
So if you grow up as part of management or around people who are in management, it's harder to put yourself in the labor side to go, oh, this thing that I just think is part of business actually sucks for the people doing the work.
Absolutely. Even being the last man on that totem pole, that
Right.
privilege. And I can't speak to growing up that privilege. I would absolutely say I was privileged in my access to education and resources. I was raised by a single mother. She had to work 2 jobs for a lot of years to get us there, but I don't feel like I ever went without because of her effort. But having that family access, having
Right.
Martin Goodman there to give you that leg up.
He was never gonna be allowed to fail.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
failure
look,
for Stan Lee was what he got in some ways. He'd failed because, I got to take whatever job my cousin will give me.
well, I mean, yeah, look, I mean, there is there's truth to that. I mean, like, he had an in with the company that obviously, cousin Marty put him up. But I mean, like, his father struggled.
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to say that in a way that was supposed to. I have real empathy for the person who doesn't know that. I mean, to him, that felt like failure.
Mm-hmm.
That felt like failure the way it would have felt to Jack if he couldn't feed his family.
Mm-hmm.
Emotionally speaking. Now, is it fair that the world's set up like that? That's a whole different discussion. But part of the reason that they clashed was like Jack was able to look at Stan and go, you're trying to figure out how to pay for the nice couch for your wife. I'm like feeding people. and Stan's sitting there going, but I have to make comic books.
Well,
and they feel that same amount of angst.
And the thing that I'm always kind of amazed it's not in the play is that idea that
There it comes.
no, no. It's just it's a small moment, but to me it's like it's something that really shows the difference between Jack and Stan. As editor, Stan was assigning himself, he was giving himself checks. And
Right.
to his credit, he was saying that I forget which book it was in, where Stan was basically saying that he was allowing Jack to kind of work ahead, right? So Jack would plot the books because he wanted to keep Jack employed. So he would just allow him to keep drawing. And that was how that process started. But really, if you put yourself in the worker's shoes, like management is writing themselves a check to write the books that the worker is actually, laying
doing the work
out.
on.
Yeah, and so like just that very small detail of like how the work actually unfolded from from that background standpoint. I don't believe that Stanley ever thought twice about it because he was writing the dialogue, and
I
to
think,
him it
yeah,
wasn't a thing.
I think that came out in the play. I think it came out in a way that like was appropriate. That Stan just it like literally never occurred to him that he wasn't doing Jack a favor.
Well, I just mean the financial aspect of it, right? So it's like we could go around and round and round about the ownership and the ideas.
No, but what I mean is there was some because there what wasn't there the point of, and this is where having read the comics on top of the play I might accidentally, but I thought there was a point in the play where Jack where Stan had said fine, you can have co-plotter credit, but I still get a writing credit. And weren't you, Kirby, like, but that still means you get paid for the work I did.
Well,
You know.
the credits, the credits did evolve for Kirby and Ditko. Ditko was the one who demanded a plotter credit, and he got it.
Yep.
And the FF became it just said by Stan and Jack.
Right.
So I mean, I think it was evolving. I always have this real hard. I always wonder what would have happened if Jack and Steve had just held on for another couple of years until Martin Goodman wasn't part of the picture, because I do think that Stan saw it as we're all a big team here. He made sure that he was the head of the team, but like I think he saw it that way. It's like if you like some people, somebody was talking to me about it, and he's like, "Oh, it's like the whole Bob Kane thing," and I'm like, "It's not like the Bob Kane thing, because like Jack's name was in all those books. Steve Ditko's name was in all those books. In fact, everybody who worked on those books, their name was in that book. I mean, like there was
and." Something I have always wondered, because they hated Stan because he'd outed the fact that they were moonlighting. But something I've always wondered,
allegedly.
Well, but no, what one of the things I've always wondered is even if he did he do it in a hey, these guys are making comics elsewhere, or did he do it in a hey, that we could get more work out of them? Because they, let's just pay them. But was he arguing on their behalf and wound up having it go the other way because he didn't understand the business side enough, or was he really trying to like get in with his uncle by throwing them under the bus? I mean, in terms of the character that I understand as Stan, I think it's way more likely that he was making a naive argument on their behalf that happened to out them because it never occurred to them that could have negative consequences for them.
That's what I think it is. I think that if Stan did it, that he's a teenager who's working for his cousin, upholding his cousin's interests,
right?
And it doesn't occur to him that if he did it, that, snitching on them is gonna get them fired. He
Well, I
doesn't.
bet you he didn't even think he was snitching on them because it probably hadn't occurred to him that, oh, this is something you shouldn't be doing or that Martin wouldn't
Yeah,
want you
yeah,
doing. He
right.
just went, oh, wait, you mean that you have time to do more books? We should be putting out more books.
Oh, yeah, maybe that too. But I think he, is likely at that age to see his responsibility to be Martin Goodman's interests.
That too.
And he knows, again, this is theoretical, allegedly, but he knows that this is happening, and let's assume he knows it's in their contracts that they can't do that. And so it seems like it's his job to tell his boss that this is happening. And I don't think it dawns on an 18-year-old or whatever he would be at that point that this is going to cost men their jobs.
Right.
And all that means. It was just,
and Stan did go through like the following 15 years, before the Marvel thing, he spent a lot of time paying people to do work. Like there was that whole thing where Martin Goodman came in and found an entire closet full of art and stuff that they hadn't published. It was just a backlog because he kept giving people work. And so, I mean, I don't necessarily think that, like, again, I think that there is an obliviousness in Stan Lee. I think that I'm still not convinced that he was the one who ratted him out. Both, Joe Simon has said publicly, like everybody knew we were doing it. But he's also a 17-year-old kid. I mean, what does he know about anything? But
that backlog of art also makes me wonder if Stan always liked comics more than he pretended to his family when he was saying that he wanted to be that great novelist or whatnot.
Well, I mean,
it makes me really wonder if like he'd been in a position where he felt like he could have just thrown himself into making the best comics ever, if that could have been different.
yeah. If you're 30 or 40 or 50 and he was all of these things and you've got the same job you had when you were 19,
Right.
There's going to be a part of you that wonders if you're failing to launch.
Right. Right.
Hey, Terry, can I ask a question? Sorry, Ted.
Yeah, no, please.
I just this just struck me, and I can't believe I haven't thought of this in all of our weeks of rehearsal and starting to put previews up. Terry, what was your memory of this conflict from that time? Like,
I was totally
was it
unaware of it. I had no idea. I saw that well, because it wasn't presented in the magazines.
right?
Hey, true believers, Jack and I are arguing again. That was never in there.
No, but like, what about when Kirby left? Like, was it just
Oh,
what?
well, I was getting ready to leave too, for one
Okay.
thing. But yeah, no, it was a surprise and it was sad. And I thought, well, these are grown-ups and this is their jobs and this kind of thing happens. I didn't think about it from, a moral standpoint, who did them wrong or, none of that.
Well, what really happened, Terry, was Kirby heard you were going to leave. So he was like, I'm out.
Well, sure.
Like, McCabe's going off to college. That's it. I'm out of here. I'm done. Done with these funny books.
But but you noticed over the years that the credits were evolving, that the credits appeared. And that was the whole thing, is that I always say that, Stan's achievement is that he created 3 distinct communities, none of which actually existed in reality. And that's how he built his company. There was the fictional Marvel universe, and then there was the equally fictional Marvel bullpen, and we're all Jolly Jack and Sturdy Steve, and
which I honestly didn't realize that the bullpen was fictional until I was talking to Ann Nesenti.
Yeah. When you're a reader, when you're,
Right.
as it was happening, you had no sense of that.
Right.
And then the third community is, us in Marveldom, us Merry Marchers and whatever. who get to write letters into Stan and Jack and all this kind of thing.
And sometimes to each other, so it wasn't as fictional.
Yes. But you know, that whole sense of fandom community, which was not exclusive to Marvel, but was still new. And there's these three communities that Stan, you know, dreamed up and or nurtured, that I don't know, I forget where I was going with this, but that's his achievement.
Yeah.
Is these three communities and the illusion that they're really all part of the same community, the larger, you know, the Marveldom.
Well, and I mean, whatever I think of Stan as a writer, whatever I think of Stan as a businessman, I don't think comics exist in the United States today the way they do if not for Stan Lee. Um, the publicity he brought to comics when he brought it to comics is what saved comics after Wortham. I will go to my grave on saying that one about Stan Lee.
Yeah.
I mean, in that sense, he's one of the most important people in comics history, just because comics might have had a much shorter history if not for him.
Yeah.
100% true. 100%.
But so we're hitting up against time, so I want to do a quick hit. This will be mostly for Mark, but anybody can add in, and then I'm going to end with my favorite final question, which I'll ask now so people can start thinking about it. I want everybody to think of one, preferably comic, but particularly when I'm talking to people who aren't strictly comic people, you can expand to any media, art form, whatnot. One or more if you need to. Thing that you love that not enough other people have read, experienced, whatever, and that frustrates you because you need more people to talk to about it. But while you're all thinking about that, for Mark, their war experiences were so different as well.
Yes.
Stan got to stay stateside and write, and not even write so much that he wasn't like, the one time he got in trouble was for breaking into a mailbox to do non-army writing.
Right.
Whereas Jack got to go to war.
I don't know if I would say got
to.
Had to. How about that? Jack had to go to war. Some of my students are reading Catcher in the Rye, and I'm rereading it right now. And every time I reread it since the Salinger documentary came out, and I discovered how much of World War II Salinger was involved in, which is essentially all of Europe. It's totally tempered the way I look at his work, and learning that level of Kirby in the war, I know that I'll be looking at his work differently too. How do you think it affected their relationship? How do you think it affected their work? Not in terms of they're thinking of each other's, oh, you're a bum, you got to stay here writing, but just in terms of that level of trauma affects who you are.
Yeah. I mean, like, and it clearly affected Kirby for the rest of his life. I mean, like everybody who knew or met Jack at any point in like the 70s or 80s, you know, would talk about that he was just an endless stream of war stories. And, you know, when you look at the New Gods and you look at the Fourth World, that is entirely comes out of that idea of facing down and truly facing down, you know, Nazi soldiers and thinking about Hitler and you know, like he got frostbite so bad that they thought they were going to have to amputate both of his legs, and that is something that, you know, Stan never had to face, you know, and but I do think, I mean, like I don't, there's literally no record of them having any sort of conversation about their war experiences that I've ever seen.
No,
or read or
and
found,
I was thinking more from a psychological standpoint than
I
like a
mean,
direct.
I think that Jack, I think that Jack's art entirely is after that experience, it changes completely, and it becomes far more like violence becomes, it's obviously comic book violence, but it becomes far more aggressive and far more explosive and far more in your face. And I think that that comes from those battlefield experiences. What I see from Stan's experience, and it's why the scene that you're talking about is in the play, is that I think it becomes sort of about Stan's ability to interface with people just by talking to them. It's like, yeah, I got to get out of this mess. I can talk my way out of this mess, and I think that is, I think that Jack saw getting out of situations as a much more muscular and direct sort of thing than Stan did. I think Stan was always trying to find the way around it. Stan wanted people, I think Stan wanted people to like him in a way that Kirby didn't. Like I don't think Jack didn't want people to like him, but I think that he wasn't as, I think in a way Stan Lee was obsessed with people liking him. And I think that a lot of those war experiences, he was supposed to be like a radio guy stringing up telegraph lines and things like that, and he somehow got people to know that he could write, and then he was writing, the infamous and I've looked and I can't find this poster that he apparently wrote, where it's a little cartoon guy going in to get the VD test and the cure, and he's like, VD, not me, which sounds like the most Stan Lee line I could even imagine. And but I think, yeah, the World War II thing, I think that's why it's in the show, however briefly, is because I think that those experiences were just they changed both of those guys, and I think that they changed them, and I make no judgment of how it changed both of them, but I think Jack's more direct combat experiences definitely changed how he approached life and how he approached his art. And I think Stan's, he was asked to do marketing by the Army, and that's
what he's good at.
That's what he's good at.
Yeah.
Anyway, now these guys can answer that other question, and I can
right.
think about if I have an answer for that.
No
question.
problem. I'm gonna start with Terry.
Well, I've been thinking, but then I got absorbed in listening to Mark. And, once upon a time, I would have said Randy Newman, but, he's not so much of a cult anymore.
No, but he's still underappreciated. And he was in my mind recently because I was watching the paper. And he's got the theme song in that.
Wisdom Bridge, a theater that's been gone for decades, back in the 90s, did a Randy Newman review that included Sail Away. And, the director, who was also the deviser of the review, clearly did not understand the song, thought that it was, this sort of uplifting kind of Born Free, You'll Never Walk Alone kind of song. Had no idea that it was about slavery, had no idea that the voice of the song was a slave trader, encouraging Africans to run on board so he could take them off to America where they'll be Americans. Just had not a clue. It was, I knew her, the director deviser, very slightly. And so we actually had a conversation about it where, I sort of mentioned in what I thought was a helpful manner that she had totally botched this.
Now, was this a Stan
right?
helpful manner or a Jack helpful manner?
But anyway, so, I'll stick with Randy Newman then, if you'll
I like
accept
it. I like it. Let's go Sean next.
Well, I'd say my newest sort of obsession would be Warren Creamer, who was a comic book artist in the 40s into the 80s, mostly known for Harvey Comics. He was co-creator of Richie Rich and Hot Stuff, and his covers for particularly the Harvey Casper line are incredibly inventive. Over the past year, I've just been becoming more and more interested in those. Jim Thompson of the Eisner Committee has had two panels the past 2 years about Warren Creamer, and the great thing that I like to say is Marie Severin, when Warren visited the Marvel offices in the 70s, told them, he's like, these guys don't know it, but the greatest cover artist in history just walked in. So he wound up ending his career at Marvel, doing things like the Ewok Adventures and those things.
Planet Terry. He did Planetary too,
Okay.
which predates Planetary, and I actually have the first issue of both of them. So let's go Brian, who is Stanley.
Well, as I said earlier, you're probably not going to get a lot of deep cuts in terms of comics from me. But what I was thinking about when you gave us time to dwell are two things that stuck with me throughout my life. One from when I was younger, and one more recently. When I was younger, I mentioned I was into the trading cards and I loved X-Men a lot, but I was also a very big Superman fan. But I was a Christopher Reeve Superman fan. I will go to my grave with him as my Superman. But I never. Sorry.
Yeah. No, just yeah.
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 But I
And
never
we'll
read the
forget about
comics.
Superman 4.
Oh yes, I mean it's
kind of.
I can get some fun out of watching it, but I loved him, and I never read the comics until what was it? And I'm sure somebody on this call is going to know. Sometime in the 90s, it was when Superman died.
Death of Superman run.
Death of Superman.
92, like November 92.
Yeah, that cover, that image has stuck with me forever. And that is a line that I read because it grabbed me so much. As an adult, I was brought back to graphic novels and comics through the Preacher series. And that was because I was just so blown away by the AMC series, the first couple episodes of the first season, that I was like, I have to read this because it's so weird and it's dark and all the like commentary on religion and stuff. It blew me away. And so that was the most recent time as an adult that I went back to comics.
So I have to ask the quick question, as somebody who'd read the comic before reading the AMC series or seeing the AMC series, something that I was struck by is how they had to take an entire season to set up what got set up in the first issue of the comic. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that part of that was they probably wanted to have a season before they went on the road just for budgetary reasons. But a bigger part of it was some things are much easier explained in comics than they are in moving pictures. And it really took most of the season to get you to where you were at the end of the first issue in terms of really understanding what was going on.
That's a great point. Yeah. And it was just so you'll always win me over with things that are dark and weird, and that fit the bill.
Well, then, like, stay in touch. We'll start a dark and weird book club because there are a lot of dark and weird comics.
Yes, I welcome it.
So, okay, Brian, who is Jack?
All right. So the question again is something that we're excited about that we think more people should be excited about.
Essentially.
Well,
I mean, it doesn't have to be like underrated or whatnot. I mean, I specifically go with that you want more people to talk to about it because that makes it
All right.
you
Well,
know,
then
so
the
it doesn't have
obvious
to be.
answer here, Tad, is the House of Ideas playing at City Lit Theater through October 6th.
You have lots of people to talk to about House of Ideas with. You see them every night. Nice try.
I'll get you your $10.
No,
Mark is handing a suitcase of cash to Brian right now, just for those people watching.
Honestly, from this is going to be going in the way back machine, but as part of my
That's
research
fine.
for this, I read I don't know, the first 20 issues of Captain America, and I was really blown away at, like, at one, growing up a fan of the Batman TV series, and then also being a hardcore Scooby-Doo fan. I was shocked at how many of those elements really appeared in Captain America. It was very
I
shocking.
did not know
and
that.
fun,
Now I'm going to
and
have to
fun.
go. Now I'm going to have to go read those.
Yeah,
Because I'm always fascinated when I discover that, oh, this thing that seems unrelated to that thing or only tangentially related to that thing is like super,
It,
you know,
it was like lots of spooky characters that were
Right.
having their masks pulled off because they were trying to
Right.
steal money, and all of it happened on military bases.
Well, I mean, it's like I grew up watching MASH because there were everybody in the family liked it. So I'd watch it with mom, I'd watch it with it. So I know MASH really well, which is how I know that like almost every TV series since has picked up one trope or another from MASH. Its most enduring legacy is the way that it changed TV storytelling, whether it was the letter episodes or, you know, the day in the life episodes, etc. Just so yeah, I love it when I see things that it might actually get me to like Scooby-Doo. That could be bad because, you know, I built my life on not liking Scooby-Doo.
But I mean, yeah, like what's great about those really early comics is that there was no sense that they had to be anything. There was no
Right.
sense that they had to be like serious, or like it was just whatever they wanted to throw at the wall, and it could be like a little goofy and a little strange, and not as goofy in, like, say, the Batman TV show way, which I love, but it's also like just so intentionally goofy. Uh, but it does touch on things that were commonplace in comics at the time. So,
And one of my favorite panels ever is from Captain America #1 with the Red Skull's brilliant exit line, "I'll be back with more murder."
I mean, okay. So to answer this question, I've been kind of racking my brain as to what I want to say, and I do think part of my process on this was to read a lot of Jack stuff without Stan, or without, and also to read Stan stuff without Jack. And I'm gonna point out two books that I think are exemplary of their work without each other. There is a hardcover book that was just released. It's Joe Maneely, like the best of Joe Maneely, and there is, and I think that this book contains a story that is, anybody who says that everything from Marvel was just Jack, I would point them to the story, and I would say this is absolutely proof positive to me that what Stan was bringing was what Stan was bringing. And it's called You Are Frankenstein, and it's a Joe Maneely drawn story. I can't remember the issue. I don't even know the issue. It was in this hardcover book.
Right.
And it is sort of a first person Frankenstein story that hits on virtually everything that would eventually become central in the Incredible Hulk. And it's executed. The art is brilliant. The writing is solid. So like some of that early Stan Lee, Joe Maneely stuff is really, Stan, because he wasn't an artist, you're not going to be able to find like a book that's entirely Stan Lee.
Right.
Although that classic interview where Stan interviewed Bob Kane and could draw better than Bob Kane could was amazing. But then when you go to Jack on his own, Commandy, the last boy on Earth, is the apex of what Jack could do on his own. It is nuts. It is crazy. It is simply, it's like a stream of consciousness storytelling, and with nutty ideas, because famously it was supposed to be a Planet of the Apes book, and then they didn't get the rights, and so Jack was like, fine, then they won't just be human apes, they'll be every animal will be walking and talking, but it's just so much fun to read. I love that book immensely, and I think that anybody who would want to denigrate Jack's talent, and there's not many of those people, but there is some of his writing that is tough to but that Commandy book
Watch it.
Yeah. But the Commandy book is amazing. So that's what I would say.
Well, thank you all. House of Ideas is playing at the City Lit Theater through, somebody give me a date, please.
October 6th.
City Lit Theater through October 6th. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There's probably a couple of Mondays in there if I know anything.
Yep.
I've been once. I'm certain I'll be again. It's fantastic. Go out and support these guys. It'll pop up in book form probably, a couple months from now, 3 months from
I would
now?
say before Christmas. Yeah.
Before Christmas.
I mean, if I really started working at it, maybe we could get it out before the show closes, but I don't think I can push myself that far.
And you shouldn't.
If you come to the show, you may be able to buy a copy of Mark of Cain and or Innocence of Seduction right at the concession stand starting tomorrow.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Signed copies, no less.
And I'll have to remember to bring the money for it next time. Because I've just got my digital copies, but I want hard copies, particularly signed. Guys, you're doing great work. Thank you so much for joining me. Sorry that I kept you late. Let me kick you out now so you can go feed yourself and put on a great show. Everybody break a leg, but not in such a way that you can't put on another one tomorrow.
Thanks for having us.
For the
Thank
cast
Thank you.
of the House of Ideas, this has been 22 Panels. We will see you after the next page.
Hey guys, this is Tyler from 22 Panels. I'm here to tell you all about our Patreon. If you enjoy this show, please consider donating to our Patreon to keep this show going. We have many different tiers, all different levels to help you decide what's right for you. Okay, so get on out there to patreon.com/22 Panels Podcast.